Hello, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, to our latest State of the Market video. We last did a State of the Market about 3 months ago exactly, in about mid-June, so we thought it was time to do another one as a checkup. And before we get too far into it, as always, if you have any questions or specific things you'd like to bring up, please type it into the chat and Tommy can put it up on the screen for us to answer. But since we last did a State of the Market about, in mid-June, we had the June Hong Kong auction, which was the first in-person event since December 2019, our August ANA Signature and Platinum Session auction, and then a host of specialized thematic showcase auctions. So between those various sales, we have a very good sense for where the market is, what's strong, what's trending, overall where things are headed. So we'd like to take this opportunity to talk about all of that and then some of the things we're doing to lean into those trends, because it is sort of a constant balance of shifting our priorities or our efforts and what we see as strong in the market and what the market really wants from us.
Perfect. Let's start with the June Hong Kong auction then, which was our first event there in 3.5 years. We were all very happy to go back to Hong Kong. After so long. Last time we were there was December of 19, and it was wonderful to go back and see our friends and see that Hong Kong continues to be this vibrant city. And we had I thought it was an outstanding auction. Even after 21 and 22, where the prices and the intensity of the market was real high. As we know, the largest coin market in the world is still the U.S. market, but I guess the Chinese are really working hard to grow that market, and it's certainly the second largest in the world now. And we had a great selection of coins. I think we should talk about the top lot in the auction, as it's a classic Chinese rarity, the long whisker dollar that we have there that realized 600,000 hammer, 690, 690 all in.
Yeah.
I guess that's not exactly what the hammer was. But anyways, this is a coin that we encounter from time to time, and we've sold
once a year or so. We'll sell one.
Yeah, we have another one coming up in an upcoming Hong Kong auction. It's a classic Chinese rarity that's very popular, and I think it's you want to talk comps a little bit and how this relates to our past results?
Yeah, so this is a good bellwether for the market. I think that's a term we use a lot when we're doing these state of the markets, where there's kind of specific types that we can look at that come up consistently enough that we can see overall trends. So Tommy, if you can pull up the prices realized list, you can see that we've sold quite a few. Only a couple of them have been, or 3 of them have been over the $500,000 mark. One for 1.2, and then the one in June, and then one other one. Below that, if you scroll a little further down on the list, you'll see most of the other results from a few years ago, and they kind of maxed out in the 100,000 range plus or minus. But I think this is a really interesting type, because there's different die varieties when you really get down to kind of the academic level of it. But most people don't collect it by die variety, right? It's hard to collect a 6-figure coin that
for sure
by variety. Most people collect it as a type.
Yeah.
And there's some varieties that are scarcer than others and all of that, but I'm not sure how much of a difference that really makes in people's minds. But what's interesting about it is what it says about the grading services. So, Tommy, can you pull up our company record for the type? Yeah, for 1.2 million. So that was graded proof 63. And that one we sold in December 2021, which was sort of at the peak of the market. In my mind, the market peaked in December 21 through June 22, July 22. That sort of 6 or 8 month period was kind of the clear crest. And then we had the one that we showed already from this past June that realized 690,000, which was graded Specimen 63. And then the one from June 2021 that you just had on the screen, Tommy, that one was graded MS 63.
So one was MS, one was specimen, one was proof.
Right, exactly.
What's the difference?
So that's sort of the point, right? This one is clearly in an older holder, and they've been graded at different times. The one from December 21 was graded several years ago. The one we sold this past June was graded within the past, 6 months or 12 months. So I'm not a professional grader. None of us are professional graders.
Yeah.
So I can't speak with absolute authority on this, but I would wager that these are all the same essential type, right? They're all pattern issues. There are different die varieties, yes, but...
And a great type coin, a great trophy coin that the Chinese collectors always go after.
But it's all just pattern issues, right? So whether you call it a mint state or a proof or a specimen, it's all the same thing, I think, in my book.
Yeah, that there's also it's also a pattern, right?
Yeah.
So I think the designation, the specimen designation, probably the most appropriate. But again, these terms often are used interchangeably, and the coins are the same and they change back and forth. The fact is that I agree with you that it doesn't make a difference what the letters are in the holder. The numbers make a difference, and of course the type.
Right.
And it will be interesting to see. We have another one coming up. It's beautiful as well.
Also specimen, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that will be I believe in the next June, or it's coming up in December.
Yeah,
I believe.
December.
Yeah, in December. So do you want to talk about the $1914 as well? Because I think that's another coin that is a good. Could be, or do we have the 1868 first?
Yeah, so
Hong Kong piece. Sure.
Tommy, before we move on to that, why don't you pull up that result from June 2021, the MS63? Because I think if I were to wager money on it, I would guess that this coin would probably outsell the one that we had in this past June, just because of the original surfaces and the toning on this. Because a noteworthy thing about the Chinese market that we're increasingly being aware of is that collectors pay a big premium for originality and toned coins.
Pretty tony, for sure.
And I think a good illustration of that is that 1868 Hong Kong dollar.
Oh yeah, it was gorgeous toning.
Yeah, we have this great selection of high-end, literally the best Hong Kong coins in existence.
Yeah.
We set record after record for those types. So if you could pull up lot 30158, yeah, this one. I mean, that is fantastic, original, and it's graded 64, which I believe is the single highest at NGC and tied with one other at PCGS. But if you scroll down to the previous prices grid on this page, Tommy, you'll see this one realized 312,000. Just give it a second to load here. Yeah, so we had a 62 sell in June 2021 for 28,800. So this one sold for over 10 times what the 62 sold for. And I have a hard time believing that the 2 grade point difference is a difference of like 250,000 or 280,000.
Sure. So I think what really, again, the toning and the timing, I think spoke a lot for this coin and the competition. I mean, it's a record. I don't think a Hong Kong dollar has ever been sold for this price.
I think this is a world record for a Hong Kong coin, period, full stop.
Okay.
So yeah, you had brought up the 1914 Plumed Hat dollar, which is another good bellwether for the market. So that's sort of on a lower scale, right? The long whisker pattern, we don't get that often, but the Plumed Hat, we're going to have multiples in every auction in varying grades, but it's
this is, if I think back to 10, 15 years ago, this is not particularly a rare coin. Mm-hmm. It's actually the most common type reverse also for the Plumed Hat. It is a coin that probably, I would say, 15 years ago, it would have been 2,000 to 4,000.
If you scroll down to the previous prices grid, you're probably going to see that.
Let's see.
How far back does this go? 2013.
I mean, you don't even, well, I guess
Yeah,
there you go.
8,000. Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, it would have been a tenth of the price,
Yeah,
essentially.
pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so scroll back up to show the photo. The point I was just making on the Hong Kong dollar is that the market really prizes originality and toning. And so I think it's worth looking at the last comparable result. So if you scroll back down, again, Tommy, sorry, if you look at the most recent coin in the previous prices grid, you'll see we actually had a 64 plus sell last December for 72,000 all in. And so you would expect a plus to sell for a fair bit more than just a regular 64, but in fact, this 64 sold for more than that 64 plus did because, in large part, one, the market's very strong and healthy, but two, the toning and the originality.
Yeah, if Tommy pulls up, if you pull up the other one, Tommy, you see that that's a white, it looks like a white coin, which, you know, in certain markets is desirable, but certainly the Chinese appreciate the colors. I mean, you can see this coin here, it's very beautiful, great quality, but it's white, right? There's a little bit of toning there on the reverse, but generally it's a white coin. So
yeah, and I think that speaks to the maturity of the market as well, that people are actually looking at the coins rather than just the grade on the holder.
Absolutely.
Right, and so what that shows is that the buyers, I think, are genuine collectors, right? They're not just investors looking to, you know, get a good value for a 64. They're actually looking at the coins and paying a premium for eye appeal.
Okay. Well, not everything is going up
right.
in value. I mean, there's certain areas of the market that are correcting from the, you know, sort of the
from the peak,
and the craziness that we had in the market during COVID. And I think one thing that we can use as an example are Chinese modern coins that tend to be, you know, when we talk about corrections in the market, the corrections from our experience, or from my experience, tend to happen first on the product level and the things that are more, you know, mundane and run-of-the-mill, what we call the product, like things that show up often, whereas the rarities and the coins that are, you know, top pop or very popular types or trophy coins tend to maintain or even continue to rise in value when other parts of the market is correcting. So I think one example that we can give is lot, if I'm correct here, 340.
The 31270.
31270, excuse me.
Yeah, this one.
Oh, there you go. And it's first year of issue. It still didn't have a denomination. It's the first very popular coin on the Panda series, 1982.
Right. When you think about modern Chinese coins, the Panda is sort of the core issue there. And as you said, this was the first year of issue before it was denominated in yuan. So technically we call this a metal rather than a coin because there's no denomination on it.
And should we just compare a little bit to the previous grid and see what we see down there?
Yeah, so when you look at this, you can see that in this type, in this grade, peaked in the December 2021, July 2022 range, which is what we were just saying, that sort of where, in general, the Chinese market peaked most recently. Like a lot of other coins and a lot of other collectibles in that same range, and then dipped since then. But in this auction in June, it sold higher than it did in December 2022 and April 2023. And it's significantly higher than the pre-COVID numbers, like in December 2019, where it was about 2/3 of the price it is now. So again, this is a good bellwether for the market because it's the sort of coin that we'll have in every auction, right? The mintage on this is, I think, around 12,000 or something like that. So it's a rare type, but not so rare that it can't be collected. And very popular for any collector of modern Chinese coins, sort of needs this in their collection because this was the start of the modern Panda series.
So for all Chinese collectors, they can stay tuned for our December signature auction that will come up on the website. And also we have the showcases, the Hong Kong showcases happening.
The Hong Kong showcase just opened for bidding, and it's actually the largest Hong Kong showcase we've ever had.
Cool.
700 something lots, I think.
Yeah, and then should we talk about our event at the ANA, which by the number of lots, was probably the smallest auction that we've had there at the ANA, I believe.
One of, if not the smallest.
Yeah, it was about 1,700 lots, and we had obviously Cape Coral as an introduction, and we had Platinum Night. The wholesale realized just over $19 million.
Yeah.
That means that we continue to curate these sales to make them better, to make them more interesting for collectors. The average item value keeps going up, which is a consequence of that curation that we've been doing. And it was again, I can mention this. We play a game every time with the staff before these sales, and everybody takes a guess on the final prices realized of the auction, and I was 25% off to the low side, back to back, which I tend to be on the low side on these things, but it's either I'm getting out of touch with the market, or the market continues to surprise us with a lot of action, a lot of intensity.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Cape Coral collection. So if you can pull up the link to that sale, yeah. I think it's worth noting that this was the final installment of the Cape Coral collection, the German coins Part 3. There is one final portion of the collection, which is the US dollar patterns, which will be sold in January, but as far as the world portion, this was it. We've been selling it for I don't know how many years.
Years.
Yeah. But do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what makes the Cape Coral collection so special?
Oh, yeah, so the Cape Coral collector, who is a friend of ours who we've known for many, many years, one of the nicest guys in the industry, a very sweet guy, that we are always very happy to see and spend time with, and also obviously one of the best eyes in whole of numismatics, probably one of the best guys, best eyes, set of eyes ever. He put together sets of different countries. His main collection is what we sold last over, I think it was 3 or 4 installments.
German was 3 installments.
3 installments,
yeah.
So his German collection, we sold it over 3 different sales, but he had a beautiful British collection. He had a beautiful Latin American collection. He had other coins from other parts of the world that were just stunning. This guy never allowed anything that didn't measure up to the quality of the collection into the collection. And this is, and obviously, he sort of harvested these results in these sales that were amazing, that attracted top collectors, beautiful coins all around, and a beautiful set is just, it's just, when it comes together like this, when a pedigree of this importance comes around, people don't want to miss, and we're very happy to and honored to have worked with him for so many years. We just saw him at the ANA. He always has a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure, but I think he might continue to collect. Who knows? But we'll see.
Once you have the bug, it's hard to get rid of it.
That's
but
right.
What I think the Cape Coral collection is a good illustration of is how, with a significant collection, the result can be greater than the sum of the parts.
Absolutely.
Right? Like each individual coin is fantastic, but when you put it together and you present it in such a way, which Cape Coral is sort of on a high scale, but we see that with our smaller single owner showcase auctions and the thematic spotlight sales, where you reach critical mass and you can realize higher prices and greater excitement around the auction when you put it all together, rather than if you were to piecemeal it off 1 year or 2 there.
Absolutely, and collectors prefer from other collectors, right? When they see a pedigree, a lot of he was a very well-known person. He is a very well-known person in the industry. So when they see that pedigree, that certainly brings an extra portion of interest to the sale, and therefore the prices, like you said. If we sold probably any of these coins individually, on average, they would probably bring 10-20% less.
Right. Yeah.
So
looking beyond the Cape Coral collection, I think it's worth talking about two of the higher dollar items in the auction, because we had two Unas in the Lion, one in 64, one in 63 plus, which, we get those regularly, but it's kind of unusual to have two such high grade examples in the same auction.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good illustration at 2 points. First, how strong the market is, that we can sell both of these coins in the same auction and they both realized over $400,000. And two, how eye appeal still matters. So we talked about this when we were going over the Chinese coins with toning and eye appeal and all of that. But there's another point here, more so than just the toning that comes into play. So typically you would expect a bigger spread between 64 and a 63 plus, right? But it was 420,000 and 408,000.
Sounds like a half an increment.
It was a half an increment spread between the two, and normally you'd expect, more than that for coins of this threshold.
20% more for the 4 or something like this.
But on the obverse, if you
Obverse
can.
on the face, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to see a mark there on the neck.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 marks there on the neck, right? So even though it's technically a 64, by the standards that the grading service use, those are still fairly noticeable marks.
Yes.
And then on the reverse as well, there's a copper spot just before the face, the figure on the reverse, right?
Yeah, right
just
there,
above the arm.
overarm, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so again, once you see those sorts of marks, it's kind of hard to look past them. Now, it's still a gorgeous coin, so don't get me wrong on that. But if you look at the 63 plus, on the other hand, problem-free surfaces, essentially. Maybe, on the technical grading standards, you're not going to reach the 64 plus due to some little hairlines
Small
or
marks,
something. Yeah. But there's no singularly noticeable deficiencies in this coin. And so with that, I'm not surprised that it sold for nearly as much as the 64, just because, by pure eye appeal, like if you look at this with the naked eye from, arm's length, I would guess the 63 plus looks nicer than the 64.
Yeah, I would agree. And it goes back to your point that you made earlier, that people, thankfully, as they should, are still looking at these coins. They're not just taking the grades. I mean, grading as diligent and as accurate as the grading services are, and they're fantastic. They are consistent. There's still sort of subjective parts of it, and it's important that people look at the coins, look at the images that we have, like Tommy was doing. You can see our images. We have multiple images for this lot. If you go back there, Tommy, and just slide down a little bit, you see that arrow, So there's the image in the slab. There's grading service images. We even now published a video of the lot being sold. This is a 360 rendering of the coin. So viewers now, with technology, have a tremendous benefit and a tremendous asset that they can go in, have their opinion on the grade and the guarantee from the grading services, but also look at these images, zoom into them, and make their own decisions based on what they like more, and pick and choose what they want to focus on.
Yeah. So we should probably talk about ancient coins as well. We haven't touched on that yet.
Yes.
So on the ancient side of things, in the A&A auction, the top lot was the Pantacapium stater. So it's a great type. It's a type that often comes in high grade. More often than not, this is going to be mint state. There are some that are in the AU range, but just by the nature of survival of this particular type, it usually comes high grade. But it's a very popular type, and it sells very well. But what is interesting about it is how far the market's come on it. So scroll down to the previous prices grid, Tommy. You'll see that, in 2015, we sold a mint state star example for $85,000 all in. And now this mint state, no star, sold for $144,000, which I thought was really interesting, just that kind of growth in the market. Typically a star I would give like a 25 to 50% premium to. I mean, it can vary a lot, but as a very, very rough rule of thumb. So if that MS star example were to come up, I would expect it to go, close to 200,000 probably. But going beyond just the six-figure coins, because we've talked a lot about the six-figure coins, I thought it was interesting to see the two Trajan Aurii we had in mint state. And this is where, I'm going to go against what we've been saying, and I'm going to say I think these two sold kind of cheaply. Like
okay.
I was expecting them to go for more. So that's a great example. Mint state 5.4 brushed. And then there was one other one that was mint state, I think it was mint state 5.3 fine style brushed that wound up selling for less than the other one, 21,600. So I don't think the market fully appreciates how hard it is to get a Trajan Aureus in mint state. Mm-hmm. And so to that effect, I think it's placing a big discount on that notation of brush. So look, scroll down to the pop report on this page, Tommy. Just give it a second to load there. A little further up. Yeah, a little further down. Yeah, there you go. So the grading service has graded what? 247 Trajan Aurii, and that's just a small fraction of all the ones that exist, but it's still a good representative of kind of the grade range for this, Trajan Aurii. And you can see of those roughly 250 coins, 4 of them have graded mint state or choice mint state. 2 of those 4 were in this auction.
Wow.
And both of them came into us raw. We got them both graded. It was just a strange coincidence that they both came in from separate individuals, coincidentally for this auction. And as far as I'm aware, a NGC graded mint state example has never appeared on the market before until this auction when we had 2. So it was really special to see them in such high grade. And this goes against my sort of traditional advice. Normally, I would tell people, try to avoid coins with notations. In this case, both of these coins got the brushed notation on the holder. But because this is a type that is so rare and hard to find in mint state, in my mind, brushed is okay because you're not really going to have another opportunity to get one that's not mint state. So you're going to have to just live with the brushing. And I'll talk for a second about why it's so hard to find them in mint state. And I think this is something that maybe a lot of collectors don't realize. But so Trajan was the first of the adoptive emperors. And as a rule of thumb, Hoard Evidence indicates that coinage follows dynastic cycles. So when you get turmoil in the empire, like when one dynasty is overthrown, hoards tend to get buried. So if you look at the Hoard Evidence of the 2nd century AD, a lot of hoards were buried during the reign of Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius, which ended the adoptive emperor line. And so those hoards that were buried at that time sort of begin at Nerva and Trajan, because prior to that it was the Flavian dynasty of Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. So, of those 3 emperors, Vespasian coins usually come in low grade, then Titus, and then
difficulties. Our apologies, but why don't we just talk about one of my favorite topics, showcase auctions. If you guys are not familiar yet with our showcase auctions, they have become a staple. Collectors are able to build their own exclusive sales with us, and we have a tremendous amount of them in the schedule. We have them under spotlight. We have single consignor ones. So
we're actually moving away from the exclusive sales so much to build sort of an anchor consignment, but open it up to multi-consigners. Mm-hmm. So the way it was, a year or two ago, and prior to that, almost all of our showcase auctions were single owner sales, which is great. We loved them. But then what we realized was that we're kind of limiting ourselves by just having single owner sales, where we can open it up to, any consigners, right? We get a collection of, French coins in. It doesn't have to be just that auction. We can open it up to all coins of French coins. And the original, the anchor consignor loved it because it makes the sale bigger and more exciting and gets more people into it. And all the other consigners loved it because they had a specialized thematic venue that they can consign to.
And the bidders love it because they can focus their attention on what they collect versus, having their coins of interest. Let's say if they collect Mexican coins or if they collect English coins, they can focus on that sale where it's curated to their collecting needs versus these other big sales, traditional big sales. I mean, some of our competitors still have these, multi-$1,000 lot sales, which, in this day and age,
5,000, 6,000, 7,000 lots.
Yeah, in this day and age, nobody wants to stick around that long. I think it's too long. People lose interest. So we are very happy to be focusing, narrowing down to the spotlight sales, which we had one. As a matter of fact, sale 61337.
Yeah, good example of sort of the strength of the showcase venue.
Yeah, so this was our first ever shipwreck and sunken treasure coinage event that was pretty impressive in multiple factors of the sale. There's a lot of, there were over 100 Heritage Live bidders participating during the sale live. Lots of interest before the sale, a lot of action, and some world records were broken. The highest value item in the sale was actually a big Atocha Silver Bar that we've offered similar ones in the past, but this was something. This was an item that I expected to bring around 30 to 40,000.
Yeah, it typically goes for what, double melt or so?
Double melt, with some variation. Maybe sometimes it's a little lower, sometimes a little higher.
How much did this one weigh? It was what, 80 something troy pounds?
Yeah, if you scroll down a little bit, Tommy, we might be able to see that in that description. I believe it melted around 15,000, 20,000. So lots of action there, a lot of competition. It ended up selling for over 80,000, which is about double of what we expected. And I believe, pound for pound, the highest price realized for an Atocha bar. Which
not even pound for pound, just absolute.
Is it
I'm pretty sure it's the world record for most expensive Shipwreck Silver Bar ever sold. Any shipwreck, anywhere in the world, as far as we could tell.
Yeah, and who knows if this item was, in a big platinum night event, would have gotten this focus attention of all these, this growing, part of the collecting world, which is specifically has to do with sunken treasure coins and the like.
I'm not an expert on shipwreck coins, and you know much more about it than I do. But what I thought was interesting looking through it was all of these shipwreck 8 reals. We had a big group of Atocha 8 reals. Tommy just pulled it up there.
These are very common coins.
To me, it's very surprising, like $1,000, $2,000 a piece for something like this. So could you explain maybe for myself and for everyone else who isn't a specialist in this?
Of course. Yeah, so I think one of the great things about this is and we keep hearing about provenance. The word provenance is an increasingly important one in our world. And how cool is it to have an item that actually you can prove it back to the shipwreck? So the Nuestra Señora de Atocha, which was a ship that was a Spanish ship that existed. That sailed from Spain in the 1620s. I believe it was 1622. The Spaniards would come to the colonies and take back the riches, and this was a very loaded ship that encountered really bad weather off of the coast of Florida, and sunk, and its treasure has been coming up to the market now for probably about 3 to 4 decades, and I think the premium. I mean, one is here you have an American coin, the earliest American coins that you can trace back to the colonies of Spain, to the 1620s, to being on the ship that sunk, then came back up. So it's just something that you can't really achieve, or you can't really get a provenance that is that old unless they're shipwreck coins, right? Because if you have a coin if you have the same exact 2 reals, the same exact 8 reals, like these that Tommy is showing, that were not from the tocher, or they're not from a shipwreck, they will bring probably a third to a half the price.
Really?
Or thereabouts. And this will probably increase over time. I mean, the provenance and the certificates and the assurance that these came from sunken treasure add a lot of appeal to consigners, or to bidders, and I mean it shows in the success of the auction.
So how do you grade these, or how do you look at these? What makes one better than another? Because to an untrained eye, they kind of all look the same, right?
Well, the feature, of course, if it's round, the rounder that it is, the better. If the legends are complete, the more legends you can see, the better.
And the date, right? That plays a big
Sure,
role.
absolutely. If the date is showing, again, the features of the coin, these are, they didn't have, these coins had no rims. They broke, like the planches broke at strike, like you see here, and they're crudely made. But the more features that are included on the coin, the more appealing that they are, right? If you can see dates, if you can see full legends, if they're round planchets, then they're going to be significantly worth more than their counterparts that are not so nice. Like this is a pretty nice one here as far as the roundness of I can't really see the legend. Seems like some of it is missing, but it's a pretty round planchet, and that's what consigners are looking for. Date, of course, full features, especially legends, which are the ones that tend to go missing because they were cut or shaved off, and so yeah, this was a great event. We will have another one put on the schedule very soon.
It's on the schedule now.
Is it already?
It is opening for bidding in February, closes in March. So
Okay.
It's going to be a standard venue for us at least twice a year.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're feeling out now, more broadly speaking, with the showcase auctions. We've had a lot of ones on the calendar over the past few months. We have a lot, between now and the end of the year, we have at least one per week closing, and
Sometimes
two.
twice a week.
Yeah, getting to the point where we may have to have 3 times a week for some weeks. But we're just kind of feeling out what makes sense, what works, and what doesn't work. So this shipwreck auction realized over $500,000, and that's clearly a great success for us, and we'll have it regularly. But if you look at some of the other showcase auctions we had, like we had this past weekend closed Spotlight Roman provincial coins.
Correct.
Which
Smaller sale.
It was a smaller sale. It's a very specialized academic area. And, what we came away from that thinking was, well, we're probably going to have to just wait until we have an anchor collection to do it, because just putting it on the calendar without an anchor to it didn't quite reach critical mass. I mean, it sold well, and I was very happy with the results overall, but as a rule of thumb, we kind of aim for like $100,000 minimum or so.
So before we move on to what's ahead,
Yeah.
So if anybody watching, any collector out there has a collection that you think could be an anchor collection for a showcase, or it could be a whole showcase, you can email me at chrisb@ha.com or sam@sams@ha.com. All of us are, all the team are eager to, we love to work with collectors in producing these sales and realizing successful results for our consigners. But now that all these showcases are happening, and some of them are closed, and we've closed our A&A sale, we have our next big anchor event is the November signature auction and Platinum Night, which is sale 3110. It is a well-curated sale on the smaller side, which we like. Collectors won't have too much trouble going through the whole sale. Lots of interesting highlights. Some of them, or most of them, you can already preview. It's already on preview here through the page.
We're still entering stuff through
as you guys can see, the sale's still being under production. Some of the images are not there yet, but you can get a sense by looking at the sale what's coming up. And I think it's interesting also to say that in conjunction with this event, 3112, which is a part of the same weekend of auctions, but a different sale number, will be a first for us.
Yeah, and so this is the OTOH collection of physical cryptocurrency, part 1, which is, as far as we know and what we think, the most significant collection of physical cryptocurrency to ever come to market. So we sold one piece in August, actually part of the U.S. coin auction, and that realized well. It realized a premium over the spot price of just Bitcoin. It was one Bitcoin. But this auction coming up is 250 pieces, which at current spot price, it's
around 5 million.
Yeah, 5 million, give or take. It's 200 Bitcoin, total value spread over 250 pieces. We should be getting them back from NGC this week, but I got a sample image from NGC. There you go. So, surprisingly, this was NGC's first time slabbing this material as well. So there's not that much of it out there. Interestingly, actually, when this issue first came out, Cassacious, in 2011, 12, and 13, they were graded by ANAX. ANAX was the standard service for physical cryptocurrency, believe it or not. Then PCGS started getting into it, and if you look at ones sold elsewhere on the market, almost all of them are going to be graded by either ANAX or PCGS. Occasionally, they might be sold raw, but we solicited proposals from NGC and PCGS and ultimately went with NGC, and there is going to be a lot of marketing efforts behind this, and I think it's going to be really exciting and do really well. My expectations are, almost non-existent because it's such a new foray for us, a new effort, but it is in many respects sort of directly in line with what we do, which is numismatics, and this is as much a collectible piece of numismatic history as any of the other coins we were looking at today.
Absolutely, and they could be, who knows, 50, 100 years from now, they could be like sort of the OG coins, the original coins that physical crypto that were originally made and released, and it's very exciting to do something that is a first for us. So we're looking very forward to that.
Yeah, and I can't tell you, Steve Ivey, our CEO, called me and asked me probably 3 times, like, why does this have any premium? It's just a Bitcoin. And my response was like, why does anything we sell have a premium?
Exactly. Why than any gold coins, there's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So typically on the market, they sell for, in the past 10, 20, 30% over the spot price. But, this, as we were saying when we were talking about Cape Coral, this is kind of critical mass. And there's going to be a lot of marketing efforts behind this. And so who knows what's going to happen, because this is kind of a first opportunity in the market anywhere for such a significant collection.
And it would be interesting to see also because there's some variation in grade. And we're curious to know if that's going to have any effect or what effect that will do. I know it will have some effect, but it would be interesting to see if there is some significant variation on the grades. And so that's exciting. That's those 2 sales, November 2nd and 3rd. And then, of course, we're always open to consignments. We have, after that, New York, which is traditionally one of our biggest events. We have December Hong Kong before that, multiple showcases. So if you have something that you're considering selling or you want to discuss with us, please email us or call us. We're happy to address that. But with that, do we have any questions, Tommy, that we have to answer? Or okay, not today. Wonderful, that's great. But if you do have some questions for us after this is over. We're always on email. We're always available.
Yeah, it
Please.
looks like we got a few questions from people. I have some coins I'd like to sell. How do I get in touch? Well, you have our email addresses. You have the inquiry forms on the website. You know, it'll come to Cris or I or one of our colleagues, and you know, we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Okay, with
Yeah.
that, we'll see everyone in the next one that will be in a couple months or so. Cheers, everybody. Happy collecting, and we'll see you soon.